9. Training tunnels and trenches. While clearing a military site to build new housing in the English town of Larkhill in 2017, archaeologists discovered something interesting. They found a network of World War I-era tunnels and trenches that were used for training exercises as soldiers prepared to go to battle. During the excavation, the team found over 200 grenades, around half of which were still live, showing that the soldiers were trained as realistically as possible. Through records, the archaeologists were able to trace graffiti on the tunnel walls to specific service members, including career coal miners, a pair of brothers who signed their names with the motto Semper Fidelis, a lance corporal from New Zealand who died in combat, and a deserter. The men left behind an array of items including tins of food, combs, toothbrushes, tobacco products, candlesticks, and a bucket that was used as a makeshift fire pit. Located just 2 miles from Stonehenge, the dig also uncovered material dating back to prehistoric times, including 4,000-year-old pottery and Iron Age huts, along with some unexpected finds from after the war, including a red 1930s sports car. Most of Britain's World War I training tunnels and trenches have been destroyed by development. This discovery offered an unprecedented look into how soldiers were prepared for battle in one of the deadliest conflicts in history. 8. Fabled U-boat. In September of 2022, maritime historian and explorer Eric Penkovich discovered the wreck of a World War I-era German U-boat, roughly 40 miles off the Virginia coast. Known as SMU-111, the 235-foot submarine entered service in 1917. It patrolled the frigid waters of the North Atlantic, where it sank 3 Allied merchant ships before the war's end. After the Kaiser surrendered in November 1918, most seaworthy U-boats were sent to Britain and scrapped. The Allies saved a few of them so they could learn about the technology the Germans used through reverse engineering. SMU-111 was among the 6 vessels that were sent to the US under President Woodrow Wilson's orders. It departed from the Azores 4 days behind the rest of its convoy, prompting Lieutenant Commander Freeland Dorbin to divert from the planned route and attempt a shorter but much more dangerous ocean crossing that would take him and his 32-man crew through the iceberg-riddled northern Atlantic. The voyage in the unheated sub was cold and uncomfortable, and the crew nearly ran out of food and fuel. They also narrowly avoided disaster after discovering that a German saboteur had installed a soluble plug, nearly causing SMU-111 to sink far from land or help. But they made it to New York Harbor as planned, beating the rest of the convoy by 2 days. In 1922, after gleaning what information they could from the vessel, the military scuttled it off the Norfolk coast. Its exact location remained unknown until Penkovich began searching for it based on records of where fishermen have reported snagging their nets. Working with a friend who was in on the plan and a crew who were less aware of what they were searching for that day, Penkovich lowered a camera into the water and was ecstatic to discover the submerged U-boat. It was easily identifiable based on its distinctive features. After the discovery, Penkovich told National Geographic that he'd like to connect with descendants of Lieutenant Commander Dorbin and his crew, and that he believes the harrowing story of SMU-111's final journey across the Atlantic deserves to be made into a movie. 7. A tank named Deborah. Tank warfare made its debut during the Battle of the Somme in September 1916. But its first majorly meaningful participation in combat came in 1917 during the Battle of Cambrai. A British Mark IV tank, nicknamed D-51 Deborah, was hit by gunfire and taken out of commission as it rolled through the village of Flesquières in northern France during the second wave of the attack. Unfortunately, 4 of the crew members died, while the rest abandoned the tank and managed to reach safety. After the battle, many of the Mark IV tanks left behind by the British became part of the German tank force. But Deborah was too damaged to be of any practical use and remained abandoned in the field until the end of the war. She was buried during the cleanup of the battlefield after the conflict ended. In 1998, after 6 years of research and finding evidence of a buried large metal object, historian Philippe Gorczynski led an excavation to recover the tank. After undergoing restoration, Deborah sat in a barn in the village for 17 years. She was moved to her permanent home at the Canberra Tank Museum in 2017. 6. A Prisoner's graphic novel. At this point, it's far too late to gain new first-hand accounts of what life was like as a detainee during World War I. In most cases, that is. In 2022, researchers at the University of Adelaide in Australia discovered what they believe might be the world's earliest autobiographical graphic novel. Donated to the university library's special collections by an alumna, the novel was drawn by a German prisoner named C. Friedrich while he was detained at an Australian internment camp between 1916 and 1919. Titled Voyage and Adventures of a Good Little German in Kangaroo Land, the graphic novel depicts an autobiographical character who was suspected of being a German spy when he arrived in Australia with plans to start a new life. He was sent to the Holsworthy internment camp in Liverpool, New South Wales, which is where Friedrich was held. The story discusses the struggles faced by detainees who managed to work past language and cultural barriers, but suffered at the hands of a system described by German studies lecturer Dr. Simon Walsh as draconian. In Walsh's words, it is the systems of detention that are enacted without due cause, which separate people from each other and their shared humanity. In addition to offering a rare glimpse into the daily challenges of life at an Australian internment camp, the discovery of Friedrich's work challenges the long-held belief that the first comic books were created during the 1930s. It's unclear whether the artist used his real name or what became of his life after he was released. Would you like to read this prisoner's novel? Tell us in the comments below and hit subscribe while you're at it. 5. Unexploded bombs. Undetonated bombs from both world wars are still frequently being discovered in the United Kingdom and elsewhere in Europe. But it wasn't something amateur metal detectorist Ryan Jr. expected to find during one of his first treasure hunts in early 2023. The 39-year-old had just bought a metal detector 3 days earlier when he joined his teenage son and some friends on a search for buried valuables in the Scottish town of Invergordon. They went to an old bomb shelter where Junior's metal detector picked up on something just minutes into the hunt. The group dug up what they initially thought was an old bottle or a spent shell and posted some photos on social media asking for help identifying the item. Junior was carrying the object when commenters responded to the post, warning him that it looked like a World War I bomb. He set it down immediately and they called the police to report their discovery. A bomb squad was called in and the group was sent away from the scene. The next morning, they awoke to learn that local schools were closed and several people had been evacuated from their homes due to safety concerns regarding the undetonated explosive. Activities were cancelled and the public was warned to stay out of the area. Authorities failed to disclose where they took the suspected ordnance or what they did with it, leaving Junior feeling disappointed that he didn't get to at least keep a few fragments as a memento of the time he accidentally shut his whole town down. 4. The Winterberg Tunnel. The Winterberg Tunnel was a 980-foot-long passageway built by the Imperial German Army that connected the German front line with its rear trenches near Craonne, France. Situated at a depth of more than 66 feet, it was used to avoid French gunfire while shuttling troops and equipment into trenches. In May of 1917, the French barraged the tunnel with gunfire from both ends, collapsing the entrances and trapping an estimated 250 or more German soldiers inside. Only 3 men managed to crawl out alive, and they described the sheer agony their fellow soldiers suffered from as they suffocated, died of thirst, and took their own lives. The tunnel was largely forgotten about until early 2020, when a father and son pair of amateur historians named Elaine and Pierre Malinowski located it following a years-long search. After uncovering a handful of artifacts, including pieces of uniforms and a pocket mirror bearing a portrait of Emperor Wilhelm II, the Malinowskis urged local authorities to investigate. Archaeologists explored the tunnel the following year by inserting a camera through a drill hole and contemplated the possibility of exhuming the soldiers' remains. But doing so would be an immense undertaking, given the depth of the tunnel, and would require the use of heavy machinery. Not to mention, some experts strongly believed that the mass grave should be left undisturbed, And in 2023, officials declared the site a war memorial and banned further exploration. 3. Forgotten graves. Years after losing his parents at a young age, Reverend Richard Freeman Sr. went on a mission to learn more about his roots. The pastor's search led him to Duncan Heights Cemetery in McCandless Township, Pennsylvania, just outside Pittsburgh. It was there the records claimed that one of his ancestors, a World War I veteran named Henry Porter, was buried. Freeman found the graves of several white World War I veterans at the cemetery, but Porter's burial was nowhere to be found. He began searching a heavily wooded area nearby, and in 2018, he discovered Porter's grave marker, hidden among the overgrowth, alongside 8 other burials belonging to black World War I veterans. The state of neglect that Freeman found the graves in left him understandably angry. A local historian told Action News 4 that the area where the markers were discovered was established in the early 20th century, specifically for African American burials. It was abandoned during the 1960s after changing ownership multiple times. In 2022, the news outlet reported that a local church was leading an effort to save and further develop the forgotten cemetery. 2. Ghost railroad tracks. New Jersey resident Liz Goldsmith was walking along the Atlantic shoreline in Cape May during low tide one day in 2022 when she noticed a set of old railroad tracks that had been revealed by a recent storm. It was one of the handful of times the tracks had been seen since 2014, when coastal erosion exposed them for the first time in nearly 8 decades. The Cape May Sand Company, whose plant was located where Sunset and Higbee beaches meet, used the tracks between 1905 and 1936 to cart sand away from the beach, which was used for making glass and cement. Some of the cement that was made from the sand collected along the New Jersey coast was used in the construction of the Panama Canal. At its peak, the company was mining thousands of tons of sand per year. During World War I, the tracks were also used to support munitions testing. They fell into disuse when Cape May officials began to suspect that sand mining was causing the beach to disappear and banned the practice. The industrial area nearby, which includes the former Cape May Sand Company headquarters, has also been long abandoned. As coastal erosion worsens and climate change brings increasingly harsh storms to the coast, it's only a matter of time before the tracks reappear again. 1. USS Jacob Jones. Built in New Jersey for the US Navy right before World War I, the USS Jacob Jones was a Tucker-class destroyer that began her career patrolling off the New England coast in 1916. After the United States joined the war the following year, she was sent across the Atlantic to patrol the Irish Sea. The 315-foot-long vessel's crew rescued the survivors of several destroyed ships during her wartime service. But her time in Europe was short-lived, and in December 1917, just months after entering the war, the Jacob Jones was torpedoed by a U-boat while sailing from Brest, France to Queenstown, Ireland. Crew members spotted the torpedo heading straight toward the ship and attempted to speed up and turn out of the way. The torpedo struck the ship's rudder, knocking out its power and preventing the captain from sending out a distress call. Commander David W. Bagley ordered everyone off the ship and onto lifeboats. Unfortunately, many men were unable to escape and were killed when the torpedo's depth charges began to explode. It took just 8 minutes for the ship to slip beneath the waves, taking the lives of 66 men. The captain of the U-boat that torpedoed the Jacob Jones took 2 badly injured survivors aboard and radioed their coordinates to the US base at Queenstown. Most of the 84 survivors were taken aboard the British HMS Camellia. The Jacob Jones was the first American destroyer sunk by enemy action. In 2022, a team of deep divers located the wreck 40 miles off the Isle of Scilly, where it sits at a depth of 377 feet. After being lost for nearly 125 years, the discovery checked off a box on many people's lists of long sought-after wartime wrecks. Thanks for watching. Which one of these discoveries shocked you the most? Tell us in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe. See you next time. Bye.